what are the glute muscles and kind of what does that look like from a biological standpoint? And I won't give a long spiel, just sort of a brief one. So the glutes are made up of three different muscles. So we have the gluteus maximus, and that's going to be the largest of the muscles, and that gives your glute shape. It's responsible for, power in the power movements and things like that when you jump, etc. Then you have your gluteus medius, and these are responsible for like stability, and these are the small muscles that sit on the sides of your hips. Then you have your gluteus maximus, and this is responsible for hip rotation, balance, hip stability, and all of those things. And so, in order to, grow that juicy peach, we must make sure that we are using exercises that are targeting each of those areas. Otherwise, you get sort of wonky looking glutes, and nobody want that, right? That's the first thing that we need to understand. So, what you might be asking yourself is, well, Alexandria, why is it so hard for people to grow their glutes? And I think that's a great question. I do have my notes here, just so you know. If you're asking yourself, why do I have such a hard time? Well, there's a couple of reasons that you might be having a hard time growing your glutes. One of them being just a biological factor, which is that some people have more fast twitch muscle fibers in their glutes. And because of that, they're able to grow their glutes faster than other people who don't have as many fast twitch muscle fibers in their glute region. And because of that, they can grow glutes faster than someone like myself who is a little bit of a slower pace to grow muscles. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, then how come, and this is sort of a question originally that I had, is like, well, how come all these like people who offer glute program, why do so many of them have BBLs? And I think the reality of all of that is, and the biggest piece in my mind is that the thing about glutes is they take time to grow. I spent 12 weeks with peach gains, but the reality is that to grow glutes effectively and for the long term, you still have to continuously be training those muscles. You can't just do 12 weeks and then stop and just expect your glutes to just stay there. And I don't know why I thought that. No muscle works that way, right? You can't build your biceps and then just decide you're never going to work out your biceps again. And all of a sudden you're going to still have biceps, right? It doesn't work like that. And so the glutes are the same way in that it does take time. The other thing about the glutes that make them a little bit tricky is because they're the largest muscle. The gluteus maximus is the largest muscle in the body. And because of that, it requires an extensive amount of load in order to actually grow it. And so I think that's a problem for a lot of folks. And I think that's the reason why people have a hard time growing it, is because they're not adequately training that muscle to grow it. Like when you think about growing the arm muscles, right? When you grow your biceps, you need much less leverage to grow your biceps because they're a smaller muscle group. But when you're thinking about like the glutes and, even the legs to some extent, you really have to be able to put the power and the force behind it. And you have to lift heavy enough to actually see some muscle growth. And so if you're using, let's say, I don't know, like a 10 or 15 pound dumbbell, you're not as likely to see those results. And because of that, you're not going to be able to grow your glutes. So I think that's the biggest, those are sort of the two primary reasons why I think people end up with BBLs that are like selling these programs. And again, I want to be clear. I mentioned this in my other video when I talked about the BBLs, which is sort of what led me to this video in the first place, is I want to be clear. I don't have a problem with people getting BBLs if you're honest about it. Don't tell me you grew your glutes that way if you didn't. And realistically speaking, if you're sort of asking, well, how do I figure out if somebody has a BBL or not? You can kind of tell a BBL because there's less leg involved and it's like all glute. If you notice, you'll notice that people who have like more natural glutes, they do have some leg and hamstring. Like you can target glutes, but you're still going to build some leg because you can't isolate your glute from your leg. They're connected by the hamstring, right? And so because of that, you can't isolate your glute specifically and not work any legs at all. You don't necessarily have to grow your legs specifically, like quads and things like that, but you are going to grow your legs some, and you are going to see some more muscle definition in your legs, or it's going to look disproportionate. And so the people who have disproportionately large booties compared to their legs may have a BBL. I want to say allegedly, maybe. I'm not trying to get called out here, but I would be suspicious. Let's just put it that way. Either that or they photoshopped it in some way. That's also a possibility. That's not out of the line of realm of possibility as well. I saw somebody with a picture the other day, and her waist was like this thin, and then her glutes were out here, and I was like, ain't no way. And I sent it to my husband. He's like, yeah, that's gotta be Photoshop. So, like, once you see it and once you recognize it, you kind of can't unsee it. I'm not gonna call anybody specifically out. I don't feel like that's my place, but those are the things to be looking out for in that. And not to say that people who have BBLs can't create good glute programs, because it is possible. It's just that if they're lying about the if they're lying about the BBL, I would be suspicious that they know what they're talking about in terms of glutes. Okay, that's enough of that. Hey guys, if you're finding this video useful or helpful in some way, could you do me a huge favor and hit that like button? It lets YouTube know this is a useful and helpful video, so that it's more likely to share it out to others of us who want to grow their glutes and, train effectively. And if you took the time to do that, I really appreciate you taking the time to do that today. So, what are some of those sort of key movements that help to grow your glutes? So, the research tells us that there are several different kinds of exercise that can help us to grow our glutes. I cannot say that 5 times fast. Grow our glutes in all these different muscle areas. So, number one is going to be the good old hip thrust, the hump in the air hip thrust. And that is one of the primary and most effective movements for total glute and muscle activation. And because of this, you're going to want to make sure you're using a scooping motion. And then when you get to the top, you want to make sure you squeeze and hold. People say generally from like 1 to 3 seconds. It's kind of at your discretion. And make sure you're lifting heavy enough. Again, you want to make sure that you are being challenged as you are doing these, but not so much that you can't maximize the squeeze at the top of the glutes. You don't want to overextend and hyperextend, but you want to make sure that you're able to maximize that line at the top. Sort of, you want to be able to like draw a line. The other thing you want to think about is make sure that your legs aren't too far or too close. If you start to notice you're feeling it in your back, you most likely have your legs too far from the bench. So you want to make sure that you are making a square and lifting your hips up to the sky in like a scooping motion and squeeze. There'll be video, of course, so hopefully that will help. The next one is Romanian deadlifts. These are a terrific exercise in order to build your glutes because they allow you to target both the hamstring area as well as grow the glutes. And so when you're thinking about this, you want to make sure that you are hinging at the hips and you want to lower the weight until you are feeling that stretch. And then when you feel the stretch, you want to stand back up. And the thing about a Romanian deadlift that I think can be a little bit tricky for some people is that, again, you need to be lifting heavy enough to grow glutes, and a lot of times our grip strength can be a bit of a hindrance. You may want to think about if you're trying to grow glutes and you feel like you're being hindered by your ability to like bend down with heavy enough weights, consider getting some straps for your weights. I have some straps that I like to use sometimes. Demonstrate them for you in this video. If you have those like square dumbbells though, like I have the power blocks here. I don't know if you can see them. I don't know if they're on camera, but they're right here. I'm pointing at them. If you have a power block, you cannot use them. This particular kind of strap. Actually, really straps don't work great with those just generally. But if you have a traditional dumbbell, getting a pair of straps to use might be useful if you're needing to progressively overload. And then single leg exercises, because you want to make sure that you're able to target each side of the glute and make sure that you're accurately and adequately training both sides of the glute so that you don't end up disproportionate. And so with that, you can do those single leg RDLs as well. So it's going to be the same as a traditional RDL, except that you're doing it on each side and putting the force and weight in one side versus the other. Another super effective movement to make sure that you're targeting each side independently is going to be a backward lunge. So you're going to extend your leg backward, and this is going to put more activation on the glute instead of on the quad. So you can also think about targeting the glutes more with specific exercises. So let's say, for example, you're doing a traditional lunge, or you are doing an exercise where you are targeting the legs, but you want to focus on glutes more. Like a step up maybe would also be another sort of single leg exercise. If you are leaning forward more, you are activating the glute more, as opposed to if you're doing like a traditional lunge and you are going straight down, you're working more of your quad muscle. And so you can also think about sort of tweaking some of the exercises that you're already doing to make them more glute focused or more quad focused, depending on what the areas are that you're trying to grow. So that's also something to consider when you're looking at the current workouts that you're already doing. So hopefully this gives you an idea of sort of like what to look for in a program, like what are some of the exercises you can sort of expect to see, so you could either build your own program or sort of weed out some of the programs that you're seeing online to see if they might actually work for you. The other thing that's really important is we want to think about the idea of progressive overload and making sure that we are progressive overloading on these movements. And you can do that in quite a few different ways. At home, which is kind of the focus of this video, is to do it at home. One of the best investments that I made, I feel like, honestly, and you can probably see it in the frame here, is my booty sprout. That has been a really effective tool for me to grow my glutes at home, because I use it as a hip thrust machine. I use it for like 100 other things too. Honestly, I love the darn thing. I do have a customer code with them, so like you can, it's like sort of an affiliate link, but not really because I'm just a customer. I'm not affiliated with them, but I really genuinely do love it. I've mentioned it in the past before. Like I use it for like 100 different things, and glutes being one of them. So I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it if you're trying to grow glutes at home. It's a great investment piece, and if you have a home gym. Because I don't have access to, I have a barbell, but like I don't have access to a ton of equipment. And that's a great way. And you can get quite a bit of weight through using the bands with the booty sprouts. Would highly recommend that as an option for you. But the way that you progressively overload at home may be more about increasing the reps than it is about increasing the weight, because you may have a limit or a cap. And honestly, we each have a cap to the amount of weight we can lift with our grip strength, and our the total weight we're able to lift is going to impact how far we're able to go in terms of what we lift, which is why a Smith machine is great, because it can help you. If you're at the gym and you use a Smith machine, that's great because it can help you to lift heavier weights with your glutes than you could actually like carry. Because then you can just lift it off with with your booty, your legs, and be able to lift more weight. But you want to make sure that you are progressively overloading, and what that may look like for you, particularly at home, is going to be more reps. Now, of course, you also want to think about progressively overloading with the weight, as we talked about, and you want to do this over a period of time. So it might look like 90, I'm just making up numbers here, 90 pounds for 10 reps. And then the next week, it might be 90 pounds at 11 reps or 12 reps. And then you want to get to like a certain number, and then you want to switch up the weight. You want to make sure that you're doing the same exercises relatively consistently, and you want to be doing them 2 to 3 times per week is how much you want to like hit those muscle groups. You don't need to hit it every day of the week. You certainly need to rest and recover, because you're not actually building those glutes while you're doing the workouts. You're building them in the rest and recovery. And then the last piece we're going to talk about, again, this is not like overnight stuff, but in 6 months, you certainly shouldn't be doing the same weights and sets as you are today, because you're not going to be seeing the result. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel a little jumbled trying to explain it. So hopefully that was logical and sensible. And then finally, the other things you want to think about are recovery and nutrition. Again, you want to make sure to the best of your abilities you're getting adequate sleep. Don't panic if you're not. If you're a mom and you're like me and sometimes sleep is hit or miss, you want to just do the very best that you can with your sleep. And also prioritizing nutrition. Now, you can grow glutes in a calorie deficit, but it's significantly more difficult to grow glutes in a calorie deficit than it is when you're in a slight calorie surplus. You don't need to eat in an extreme calorie surplus. And I think this is one of the things that I had kind of a hard time understanding when I was doing the Peach Gains program back in 2023. But sort of the key takeaways for me from a nutrition standpoint are, again, prioritizing that protein. Maximize the protein in your diet that you're getting. I always say to shoot for at least 100 grams, but it's going to look different for every person. You want to think about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. So you want to think about, your sort of target weight or, ideal weight of sort. I kind of hate that term of phrase, but you want to be thinking about that when you're choosing how much protein you need to eat. But I think everybody could benefit from getting about at least 100 grams of protein a day. So you want to make sure that you're prioritizing your protein. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be cutesy and fancy. You just want to try to make sure you're getting to that 100 grams of protein. I'll link some of my nutrition videos in case you find those helpful, because I am like lazy girl nutrition all the way. Ain't nobody got time for that. I am not a meal prepper. I'm not a chef. I'll link those for you. But again, if you are going to be in a calorie deficit, then it's even more important that you're making sure that are getting an adequate amount of protein. But everybody's calorie budget is going to look different in terms of what's going to grow glutes and what's not. So I can't say like you need to eat X number of calories if you want to grow your glutes. But you want to be thinking about approximately 500 calories more than maintenance to be in surplus. And that's probably about what you would need in order to be in an adequate surplus to feel like you're beefing up your glutes. And I think that's also what's been really helpful for me. this time around in the Rev series. Spoiler alert on that. I feel like I've had a fair amount of glute growth from doing Rev, and I think it's because of my sort of accidental calorie surplus from being sick and traveling and all the things. But I think that's played a pretty major role. You want to just think about taking time and, try not to be impatient with it. I know we can want results super fast, super quick, but the reality of it is if you're like me and you get those glutes in 12 weeks and you're feeling good about it, if you don't continue to strengthen and practice building those muscles, you are going to lose them. Just like with any other muscle group. So make sure that if it's something that's important to you, if you want to have glutes, if you want to grow your glutes, that you're staying consistent with doing these kind of programs and find a way to work it in to your programs in the long term. So I hope this video has been useful or helpful. And if it was, I'd love if you give this video a thumbs up. It lets YouTube know it's useful or helpful in some kind of way. And until next time, bye friends.